The Indianapolis Motor Speedway is one of the most legendary venues in all of motorsports. Every time NASCAR arrives at this historic track, the pressure is enormous. Drivers know that one mistake can completely change the outcome of the race, while one perfect move can create a career-defining moment. The 2026 race at Indianapolis delivered exactly the kind of drama fans have come to expect from this iconic venue. From intense battles on the track to emotional radio communications inside the cars, the race showed just how unpredictable and demanding NASCAR can be. And when the cameras captured the drivers talking to their teams, reacting to traffic, dealing with handling problems, and fighting for every position, fans got a unique look inside the minds of the competitors. This is NASCAR Radioactive. From the very beginning, the atmosphere at Indianapolis was intense. Every driver entered the weekend knowing that this was not just another race. The history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway creates an extra level of pressure, and every team wanted to prove that they had the speed and strategy to compete at one of NASCAR's most prestigious venues. As the race got underway, the drivers immediately began searching for the perfect balance between speed and control. Indianapolis is a track where confidence is critical. Drivers have to push their cars to the limit while also protecting their tires and managing traffic. Inside the cars, the radio communications quickly became a story of their own. Some drivers were calm and focused, communicating with their crews about adjustments and strategy. Others were already frustrated by the handling of their cars. The slightest problem could make a huge difference, especially when the field was running close together. One of the biggest challenges for the drivers was traffic. When you are racing at Indianapolis, you cannot simply focus on the car directly in front of you. You have to think several moves ahead. Drivers are constantly looking for opportunities while trying to avoid contact with competitors around them. Every corner creates a new decision. Do you stay behind the car ahead and protect your tires? Do you move to another lane and try to make a pass? Or do you take a risk and attack immediately? Those decisions are made in only a few seconds, and sometimes a driver can make the perfect decision and still find himself in trouble. As the race continued, the intensity inside the cars increased. Drivers began reporting handling problems, changes in grip, and concerns about their tires. Crew chiefs were constantly trying to understand what was happening and determine how to make their cars better during the next pit stop. This is where NASCAR racing becomes a battle between the driver and the entire team. The driver feels the car, the crew chief studies the data, the engineers look for answers, and the pit crew has only seconds to make adjustments. At Indianapolis, communication between all of them is critical. A driver might report that the car is too tight in one corner but too loose in another. The crew chief then has to decide whether to make a major adjustment or risk changing something that is already working. There is no perfect answer. Sometimes the smallest adjustment can transform a car. Other times, a team can make a change that appears to help, only to discover that the car has become even more difficult to control. That uncertainty created plenty of emotional moments throughout the race. As the competition became more aggressive, drivers began fighting harder for track position. Indianapolis rewards patience, but there comes a moment when patience has to disappear. If you wait too long, the opportunity may be gone. If you attack too early, you could lose control of the race. That is the difficult balance every driver must find. The radio conversations reflected that pressure. Some drivers encouraged their teams to stay calm. Others demanded changes, and a few could barely hide their frustration. This is what makes NASCAR Radioactive so fascinating. Fans do not just see the cars going around the track. They hear what the drivers are experiencing in real time. When a driver suddenly says that the car is not responding the way it should, you immediately understand how difficult the situation has become. When a driver celebrates a successful pass, you can hear the confidence. And when something goes wrong, the emotion is impossible to hide. At Indianapolis, even experienced drivers can become overwhelmed by the pressure. The race also became a test of strategy. Pit stops could completely change the running order. A team that had struggled earlier could suddenly find itself near the front after making the right call. Meanwhile, a driver who had been running inside the top 10 could lose valuable track position because of a poorly timed caution or a slow pit stop. That is the unpredictable nature of NASCAR. One moment, everything is going perfectly. The next moment, the entire race changes. For the drivers, the key was staying focused. The race was long, and there were still many opportunities for things to go wrong. A driver could not afford to become too aggressive too early. At the same time, nobody wanted to give up valuable positions. As the laps continued to disappear, the pressure became even greater. The teams began thinking about the final stage of the race. Fuel strategy became important. Tire management became critical, and every radio message suddenly carried more weight. The crew chiefs were trying to prepare their drivers for the closing laps, but the drivers knew that they would eventually have to make the final decisions themselves. At that point, instinct takes over. The green flag waves. The field accelerates. And suddenly, months of preparation come down to a few intense laps. The final part of the race delivered some of the most dramatic moments of the entire weekend. Drivers were pushing harder than ever. Cars were fighting for position. And every mistake became more expensive. Inside the cockpits, the radio communications became increasingly intense. Drivers were asking for information. Crew chiefs were giving instructions. Spotters were warning about traffic. And everyone was trying to maintain concentration. One wrong move could end a driver's chance at victory. That is the reality of racing at Indianapolis. The track may look simple from the outside, but behind the wheel, every lap is a high-speed mental battle. You are managing the car. You are managing your tires. You are watching the competition, and you are listening to multiple voices on the radio, all while traveling at incredible speeds. As the checkered flag approached, the tension reached its highest point. Every driver knew exactly where they stood. Some were fighting for the win. Others were fighting for a top 5 finish. And some were simply trying to survive the final laps and bring their cars home. But regardless of their position, nobody wanted to make a mistake at Indianapolis. The final laps were filled with determination, frustration, excitement, and relief. When the checkered flag finally waved, one driver had accomplished what everyone else had been chasing. Victory at Indianapolis. For the winning team, it was the reward for an entire weekend of preparation, strategy, teamwork, and execution. But behind the winner, there were countless other stories. Drivers who came close, teams that made the wrong strategic call, competitors who fought back after early problems, and others who were left wondering what might have happened if just one thing had gone differently. That is why races like this are so special. The result tells us who won, but the radio tells us the story behind the result. It tells us about the frustration inside the cars. It tells us about the pressure on the crew chiefs. It tells us about the moments when drivers had to make decisions without knowing what would happen next. And most importantly, it shows us the human side of NASCAR. At Indianapolis, every driver came with the same goal, to win. But only one team could leave with the trophy. Everyone else had to look back at the race and ask themselves what they could have done differently. For some, the race was a breakthrough. For others, it was another difficult weekend. And for a few, it may have been a reminder that NASCAR can change in an instant. One caution, one pit stop, one pass, one mistake. That's all it takes. The 2026 Indianapolis race once again proved why this track holds such a special place in racing history. The speed, the pressure, the strategy, the rivalries, and the unforgettable radio moments. All of it came together to create a race that NASCAR fans will remember. Because when the cars are on the track at Indianapolis, nothing is guaranteed. Drivers can have the fastest car and still lose. A team can struggle all day and suddenly find itself fighting for the lead. And a single moment can change everything. That is the beauty of NASCAR. It is unpredictable. It is emotional. And it is incredibly demanding. The 2026 Indianapolis race gave fans a front row seat to all of those emotions. From the opening laps to the final checkered flag, the drivers pushed themselves and their machines to the absolute limit. And through the NASCAR Radioactive coverage, fans were able to hear every moment of that battle. The frustration, the excitement, the pressure, the celebration, and the disappointment. This was more than just another race. It was a reminder of why Indianapolis remains one of the most important venues in American motorsports. And as the teams leave the speedway and look ahead to the next challenge, one thing is certain. The memories from this race will remain. The drivers will analyze every decision. The teams will study every mistake. And the fans will continue talking about the moments that made the 2026 Indianapolis race unforgettable. Because in NASCAR, the story does not always end when the checkered flag falls. Sometimes, that's when the real story begins.